Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Friday update. Usually it is crypto, but this week it's going to be stocks and macro once again. Partially because I was planning on doing this anyway, but then we had some issues with Substack, couldn't get it to work yesterday or Wednesday. So it's kind of going to be a combined article for Wednesday and Friday. And then in this video, I'm going to go over what I go over in kind of the second half of that article. So in the video, I want to go over PMI, which is an overall look at business activity in the U.S. and also GDP, now that GDP data is officially out. So I'll start off with PMI. So PMI stands for Purchasing Managers Index. And like I said, it gives you kind of an overview of overall business activity. It measures things like new orders, prices paid versus prices charged, so inflation, employment, and a few other things. And when the reading comes in over 50, it means the economy is expanding. And when it comes in under 50, it's a sign that the economy is contracting. And the PMI for October, at least the preliminary recording, came in at 47.3. So it's been contracting now for 4 straight months. It's come in less than 50 for 4 months in a row. And the one area I want to focus on is the services PMI. So the overall PMI is broken down into services and manufacturing. Obviously, those are the two core parts of business in general. Pretty much everything can be summed up into one of those categories. So services PMI came in at 46.6, which was also the 4th month in a row that this one was below 50. The difference is that the services economy got so overheated during all the reopening phase and everything, and people had a lot more money to spend, and they did so on services. So services businesses were doing great, and services PMI actually went all the way up to 70, which was an all-time high. So we're contracting, but we're doing so from a very high level. So I've talked before about kind of discretionary spending. A lot of this happens in services, and basically services at this point are what's holding up inflation and what's holding up the job market with sectors like leisure and hospitality. But again, even though we've been contracting in services for 4 months in a row, we still haven't really seen many of those signs in the labor market or in spending. I mean, spending has come down a little bit, but people are still spending at a decent amount, not anything to cause prolonged recession or anything like that. And so services is what is holding everything up. And so I just wanted to give a quick update on that because I think that the PMI can be kind of a leading indicator, because the managers that are surveyed for PMI do so on they answer questions on current conditions, and they also answer questions on future expectations about 6 months out. So this could be kind of a leading indicator, and it might indicate that we might see more contraction in the services sectors of the economy. Now I want to get to GDP. So versus overall estimates of 2.4%, I know I said 2.9 in the last video. That was the Atlanta Fed specifically estimating that. But overall aggregate estimates for 2.4%. And GDP actually came in at 2.6%, which was a little bit higher. The one area that I was watching the most was inventory. And I said that inventory was going to continue to grow, but at a decreasing rate. And that happened. It just didn't have as much of an effect on GDP as I thought it would. So slowing inventory growth actually subtracts from GDP because you want to see growth at higher growth rates, which indicates that more is being produced at a faster rate. That adds to GDP. If it's anything else, it's going to subtract. So inventories subtracted 0.7% from GDP. And the real wild card ended up being net exports. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the dollar has been very, very strong this year and saw a ton of growth in the first half of the year. And that caused, obviously, when the dollar is stronger, the U.S. can buy more, so they were importing more, and they were exporting less because compared to other currencies, everything was more expensive because it's all denominated in dollars. So net exports is exports minus imports. So when you import more and export less, net exports overall goes down. And in Q3, the average net exports was we in other words, we imported about $72.5 billion per month more than we exported. And compared to the first half of the year, that's a lot less. The first half of the year, we imported about $90 billion more than we exported. So the overall net exports were going down, which is overall a boost to GDP, and it actually added 2.77% onto overall GDP, which is a 42-year high. So a historically high increase of GDP is attributed to net exports here in Q3. So I thought that was worth mentioning for sure, because that definitely had a huge impact on the final number. Lastly, I just want to go over consumption. So basically, retail spending, or spending by individuals. This was up 0.35% in Q3. So consumption makes up about 75 or 70% of GDP. So this is definitely an important piece. It's not usually as volatile as things like inventories or net exports, but it still is a huge part. So it's important to go over. 0.35%. Quarter over quarter is not that high. It's actually below average. So the consumer is weakening, but is not yet weak enough to subtract from GDP. And again, services and goods are the two components of personal consumption expenditures, or PCE, which is the overall mechanism that measures consumption in GDP. And so services went up way more than goods. Actually, demand for goods is shrinking. So demand for spending on goods actually subtracted 0.28% from GDP in Q3, and demand for services, spending on services, added 1.24%. So the services economy is still pretty strong. Like I said, it is contracting, but it's doing so from such a high rate that it's still enough to keep things going and to keep GDP up and to keep contributing to it in that way. And again, we haven't seen the effects that PMI is kind of foreshadowing in services. So I think we're going to see that show up in leisure and hospitality jobs first before anything else, because obviously when companies are seeing less demand for their products, they're going to start removing job openings and also laying people off. So we kind of saw that in the job openings data for August, so definitely going to keep an eye out for that. I believe that's going to be released in a week or two for the month of September. So that is something to look forward to as well, as we kind of navigate this whole thing with the services economy, propping the whole economy up. So that is it for this week. If you have any questions, definitely leave them below. And until then, I will see you again next Wednesday.